This is for those that may not know, this is actually part three of our four-part series on economic empowerment. And so we want to thank our sponsor for this four-part series on economic empowerment. So our first speaker is Emery Younes. He is the Vice President of Business Banker. He's Vice Business Banking at First Citizens Bank. And he has been with us a couple of times in the past. And so we're so grateful to have him with us today. And then following Emery will be one that is no stranger to the Murray Center and the Center for Religion and Civic Culture, and who's also the past executive director of the Cecil Murray Center, but now the proud pastor of Reed Temple AME Church, and that is Pastor Mark Whitlock. Yay! So we're going to go right on in and let them share, and then after both of our speakers have shared, then we'll open it up for Q&A. We will invite you to put your questions in the Q&A or also in the chat, and we want to have some dialogue with you, and then we'll close out with an activity. Thank you. And so let's get started, and we invite up to the platform Emery Younes. Thank you, Emery.
Thank you so much, Reverend Najuma. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be with you all here today. This is in our little warm up. It was great to bring the gang all back together. And to answer your question, Reverend Mark, it's been about 16 years that we've known one another.
Wow.
We met in my previous engagement as a vice president of community relations at Wells Fargo Bank, who proudly sponsored the Cecil Murray Center for Community Engagement. And it's really amazing to be with everyone here. And I'm really grateful to you, Reverend Najuma, for kicking us off with that brief video by our dear departed Chip Murray. And he really nails the entire purpose for this session today in that very simple, oft used quote, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man how to fish, he eats for a lifetime. And that's our primary objective in taking this time to be able to deliver this content. To give everyone a little bit of background on me, Emery Younes, Vice President of Business Banking at First Citizens Bank. I come from the sharp end of the bank, and it's my job to be able to articulate and express the needs for our business customers as well as our nonprofit customers on access to capital. There are going to be some banky words thrown in here and there, but I'm from Brooklyn originally, so it's not going to be too fancy. Hopefully, if you have questions, if we can hold those until the portion where we can address them through a general Q&A, that would be great. But it'll all be clear as mud by the time I'm done, which will make Reverend Mark's remarks that much more interesting. So that was my strategy. But to kick us off, the real question, what we're meeting for today is a blueprint on sustainable funding. What is sustainable funding? It's a very important portion of the viability and life of the organizations that you all represent. There's a bunch of words, but I like to explain it more simply. People think of funding, and funding can come one of three ways. Either you can hit the lottery, or you can be a CEO, or you can be like just the rest of us. And those lotteries are a one-time windfall that can create more problems than they necessarily solve. I mean, we've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence supporting that. Not everyone's a CEO, and not everyone should, because there's a lot of CEOs that may not have the true objective of the organization in mind, and then there's their own individual interests that can be served. And then there's the rest of us. We have some high-paying jobs, we have some low-paying jobs, and we have some no-paying jobs. We want to try to make sure everyone has that high-paying job that's able to provide for their provide for their needs. They're able to achieve some of their wants, and they're able to set aside some for a brighter future. And that's where a sustainable funding model really comes into play in the discussion. Um, we're going to touch on a couple of different aspects when we approach the subject of sustainable funding. Where do we go to get this sustainable funding? Who should be part of the process? And how should we develop, implement, and measure the success? But really, my value to you all here today is to come to you as a banker. And as a banker, I'm going to provide you that banker's take on it all. And the word that in the finance world is used to describe the financial picture of any organization, nonprofit or for-profit, is the capital stack. The capital stack is going to have two key components. It's going to be equity and it's going to be debt. So that is all the monies that you're able to amass to deliver on your mission. The capital stack, when we talk about equity, those are going to be your donations. Those are going to be your grants. Those are going to come from foundations and corporations. And God willing, you're able to bring it all together to a point where you can establish an endowment, which is a self-funding, replenishing model for sustainability of the organization long term. Who knows? Maybe one of those individual private donors does hit the lottery and they're able to stake your endowment. But we've seen organizations succeed much more effectively through planned giving programs, through totally blanking on the word right now, but through not only ongoing planned giving, but also in their last will and testament to be able to pledge funds for the sustainability of the organizations. When we look at the debt side of the capital stack, we're going from as simple as credit cards to real estate loans, to equipment finance, to lines of credit. Now, I order it in that way to give you an idea of the difficulty for each successive level to be able to get those forms of capital to be able to fund your operations. Credit cards are easy. I know that we have a general panelist and participant split. So one of the key things that I can bring to everyone's attention just before this call, a very important announcement was made that affects the debt portion of the capital stack. In the comments, if anybody wants to type in what they think that important announcement was, I can just keep on chattering for a bit and just making sure we keep it moving. Nope. Not, I mean, he's got an announcement every day and several times today, but that's not what we're talking about. For those of you that may not be aware, right now for the last 2 days, the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee, there it is, Chairman Powell made an announcement that they will keep the interest rates steady. There is not an interest rate cut. Despite the prognostications and however people want to look at or spin this, the interest rates going back down in a hurry is not a realistic expectation for you all. And I put that out there not to dissuade anyone, but to inform and educate so that you can prepare around that information. Another key part of that entire discussion when we talk about finance is that nonprofit finance is specialized. So a lot of those principles underpinning for-profit organizations, they can translate into the nonprofit world, and it's important to keep those in mind because the wealth of good work that an organization does cannot be used to service the debt the organization incurs. So we need to keep that in mind, and it's to give you all a very clear-eyed reality as far as how we evaluate these opportunities. It's not for lack of appreciation for the good works that you're all doing, but there's the fiduciary responsibility that financial institutions have. But it's not just financial institutions. See, that's the funny thing. People think it's just banks that are being so particular in how you present or you put in a request for a loan. Um, the grant process is just as rigorous, if not more, in a lot of regards. So one of those key aspects is responsible management of those finances and being able to articulate how that is being managed. So nonprofit finance is specialized because it has those different objectives, where a for-profit corporation's in it to win it, to make the money. Nonprofit organizations and faith-based organizations are also in it to win it for a greater good. But it goes back to that real question: society's entire definition of what a public good is, of what the role of the government is. And the role of nonprofits is growing and changing and evolving right before our very eyes. We're 110 days into a heck of a roller coaster ride, and I'm sure you've seen and felt a lot of those changes taking place. In order to really effectively capture how an organization goes about fulfilling its mission, nonprofit has different accounting. There may be a very cherished and celebrated congregant among you that has some experience with accounting, but that's not necessarily going to get you to where you need to be. In addition to understanding GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles, and specifics around accrual basis versus cash basis, nonprofits have a different set of requirements that invariably almost always require audited financial statements. If your organization is not currently getting that, having those audited, those statements of your financial performance over the year audited by a certified auditor, this is something that you need to plan for and invest in order to be able to, with transparency, be able to demonstrate the financial responsibility that you all bring to the management over your organizations. Now, I know houses of worship may not even file tax returns or have those audited statements, but those reviewed financial statements need to be signed by those individuals responsible. Now, what those individuals look like, the executive staff, the executive committee, the staff, and the board all come into play when we're looking at these types of requests. And the reason that's important is that the guarantees for these loans are different. Stepping back to a word I just threw at you all, guarantees. It's really important to understand how this plays into it. When I make a loan to a business, what I'm looking at is not only the strength of the business, but the strength of the guarantor, or the individual who operates the business. For nonprofits, they do not require personal guarantees. Now, that doesn't mean that, hey, something didn't work out exactly as we planned. Oh, well, that's not many banks would stay in business if that's how they operated. And unfortunately, the consequence of that is that a lot of banks shy away from making these very crucial these debt capital instruments available, simply as a matter of the accounting does not necessarily support the requests being made. Last but not least, banks like First Citizens Bank have different DSCR. Now, that was a little banky that I threw at you, and that stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio. And we'll dig into what all of those different things look like as we explore some very important aspects. But to put it simply, for every dollar of debt an organization, a business has, the general guideline for for-profit organizations is that they have to show $1.25 of net income after all expenses are paid. So that is for the for-profit side is 1.25 to 1 is the DSCR. For nonprofit organizations, recognizing that they are not in it to make a profit per se, but to be able to deliver on their mission and provide service to the community, that DSCR goes down to 1 to 1. We need to be sure that the net income after all expenses covers each dollar of debt service. Now, debt service is a little more complex, but basically it's you take a look at the entire year, you're looking for a loan. That loan has a specific monthly payment times 12, divide that by your net income. So that's the simplest way to really explain your debt service and the coverage needed for it. But as we dig into DSCR, we're going to look at a couple of key elements, and please feel free to take some time to jot down some notes. When we're looking at these, the very first component that we want to look at is your income. That's going to come from all the different sources of income that you realize. And I'm sharing these for you to think of and use it as a checklist. Which ones of these are you currently receiving in order to build out the strategy, build out the blueprint for your sustainable funding? Now we look at probably the largest source of income that we realize is going to be from individual donations, private donations. Well, that's the collection plates, or if that's planned giving, as we described, or bequeathing certain assets upon an individual's passing. That's going to be another aspect. Another element is through corporate funding. Now, the nature of corporate grant making and foundation giving has become more particular when it comes to the needs that nonprofit organizations deliver on. An important element of this, and I know Reverend Mark and Reverend Najuma have ample experience in understanding how those guidelines can define and determine. It's a matter of being able to deliver the narrative that speaks to your value proposition from an economic development perspective. And that's crucial language there for you all to really understand how it is to speak to the people that can unlock these funds and be able to deliver that support for the success of your mission. Correspondingly, just as with corporate foundations that issue these grants, there's government grants that are available. Now, these government grants are generally delivered and focused on delivering value specifically for particular initiatives. We're not sure what the future, what the broader landscape looks like in terms of government grant funding. I think it's fair to say that it will be radically changed and invariably restricted in many regards. I think that's just a very clear-eyed kind of perspective on it all. And then we look at another way to kind of pivot. How are we able to deliver? And it's really reconsidering the services that you're offering, not necessarily eliminating those services or reducing those services, but really taking a look at and seriously considering charging fees. And that's a reality that we need to look at. We know the depth of need that is in our communities. But as leaders in the community, it's important to lead the community to understand that these services are not free. They have material costs, and that it's an honest approach. You can deliver $100 worth of fee services to one person. If you were to defray that cost of $100 and divide it and accept a portion of that in direct fee-based for those services, you can diversify and expand your impact. And it's not necessarily to be at a specific fixed rate. Sliding scales are completely acceptable, but we need to look at different ways to be able to offset the expenses. And we'll dig into expenses in the next slide. And that's going to be much more bankery. So buckle up. Another aspect to it all is not just being able to deliver these services on a fee basis, but also to expand that and diversify that through social enterprises, being able to connect with your communities and be able to engage and not simply feed a man for a day, but feed him for a lifetime. And that's where social enterprises have evolved as a very effective way for a lot of organizations to build sustainability into their funding, into their capital stack. And then, of course, last but not least, are non-traditional approaches. Those are going to be your crowdfunding. Those are going to be giving circles. Those are going to be angel investors. And I list it in that order as well, because that is from simplest to the most challenging. I remember I was speaking with a group of entrepreneurs, actually just last week in Glendale, small business, and there was this what I consider irrational exuberance and a lot of discussion and insistence that people talk about angel investing. And they asked me as a banker what my experience has been. Oh, I'm not actually, thank you for that, Daniel. I'm actually not going through slides. This is just some notes that I had prepared to be able to speak coherently as well as I can anyway. And angel investing is one of those things, and they asked my impression, and I told them I'm more likely to score an NBA contract than get an angel investor. It's that simple. And I mean, I know there's room for a 50-year-old, 5'9", slightly plump individual in the NBA. I think it's important from a DEI perspective, but something tells me it's not going to really go over well with the fans. So keep in mind that it is a possibility, just as anything is a possibility, but it's not probable. So I just put that out there again to keep everyone on the same level. The flip side of that equation are your expenses. Now, in banker speak, we break those down into two broad classes. It's going to be your capital expenses. Those are going to be the big, heavy things that you can put your hands on, like real estate, like vehicles, like equipment. And those are generally going to be a higher dollar amount in terms of your total expenses stack. The other is going to be operating expenses. That's going to be your payroll. If you don't own the current facilities you're in, that's going to be rent. That's going to be those professional services. Like I said, nonprofit finance is more complex and requires specialized services. And the generosity of individuals willing to donate their time, the unfortunate reality is you get what you pay for. And that's really what it is. And people can do their best, and it's not to diminish their dedication or commitment to the mission to want to support you through volunteer efforts. And they can play a crucial role of oversight in that. But I strenuously recommend that you retain professionals when it comes to these professional services. That's going to be your accounting, that's going to be your legal, that's going to be insurance services. And last but not least, we're talking about utilities. I mean, that's not just your water, electric, and gas. Now it's connectivity, because another important part of being able to expand your scope, extend your reach, is going to be connectivity to the internet. It's going to be those resources to be able to more effectively spread the word. So now we take a look at income and expenses. We take a look at the banker's take on it. One of the other things that I'm grateful for, one of the experiences I'm really grateful for, is the amount of time that I've spent working with various nonprofit organizations, not just as a professional, but also as a board member. I've served with several different organizations with several different issue areas, and I can tell you that board development is key to nonprofit organizations, whether that's religious organizations, whether that's your general nonprofit. Uh, and it's not just how nice someone is. We're all nice, or we can be, but it's a matter of understanding how they contribute to your strategic thinking. Remember, the entire purpose of this session today is for us to develop a blueprint on sustainable funding. And sustainability of funding should be top of mind as you look at your board. I'm not even, I mean, so again, to just be very clear-eyed, a lot of people have boards that are full of fantastic human beings. This is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that you need to have an effective board. And some of those most effective board members are not very nice, but they believe in your mission and they are out to advance your interest. So keeping that in mind, strategic thinking is important. But strategic thinking alone, hey, I'm a big picture guy, I really don't know the details of it, isn't going to get the job done. You also need to look at someone with tactical experience. You need someone that has been on the ground, that has done the things you are asking them to do, and then they have done it well. Not only that, these individuals, the most effective board members, are going to have a network that they can engage. Someone that's one of those really nice human beings that's been on the board for 30 some odd years, and this is their way to get out of the house once a month, may not be the best board member for you. And this is one of the benefits of being the banker. I can say these things that everyone on here probably thinks, but they're not sure they want to say it out loud. And last but not least is the personal commitment, because you can have someone that has the head for strategy, that has the tactical experience, that has the network. It's the personal commitment that really brings it all home. And that said, you need to be able to lay out very clear expectations. What is your give and get? It's not a give or get. It is a give and get. How much are you willing and able to contribute to supporting the mission personally, financially? It doesn't have to be an astronomical sum. I've been on boards that our that the give and get, the get was $25,000 a year in funding. The give was something as simple as $100 the entire year. It's not about you sustaining the organization from that. But remember what I said way back when we talked about, if you think bank underwriting is the most stringent, grant underwriting is just as stringent. One of the questions that as people apply for grants, they're asked is, how many of your board members give to the organization, right? So that's an important thing, and it doesn't have to be a large sum of money. If $20 is all they can afford to give a year, give it. Require something, you know. Just back as we go back to the entire subject of fee-based services, sliding scale, just something to help defray the costs, just something for them to demonstrate their own personal commitment to your organization. I know I've ran on a long time, but we're bringing it home right now. Strategy is more critical in the nonprofit sector than the for-profit sector. Because for-profit, you can have a company with all kinds of junky fundamentals, but as long as they make money, everybody's happy and they're paying their bills, they're not worried about it. The structural challenges that nonprofit organizations experience mean necessarily that limited resources are being used to meet limitless needs. So that's where we really need to dial it in and take the time to think through that. Um,
Emery, say that one more time. Say that last.
the
That's a
limited
quotable. Say that. Say that.
limited resources are called upon to meet limitless needs. When you look at that and how all of society has changed how they think about what is a public good, what is government, what should their role be, that delta between those two is the obstacle facing the nonprofit sector. Another closing thought, thoughtful and deliberate board selection is crucial. Lots of people want that shiny badge, but none of the work that comes with it. And there are lots of unsung heroes that do the work without the recognition. So it's important to be able to build your strategy with these few thoughts that I was able to share with you today. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to you, Najuma.
Thank you, Emery. Listen, so at some point, these videos are going to be clipped and put on our YouTube page. And I'm gonna just say this to everyone on. There's 48 of you on. If you're smart, you will send the link out to everybody you know and tell them to jump on this call. This is gold right here. What you all just got in the last 30 minutes is gold. No one's going to tell you this. There are people out there that will take your money and help you set up a nonprofit, and they will not tell you these details. And you will be very disappointed when it does not go well. Because what Emery just shared with us is the secret sauce to our success.